Welcome to today's episode of the Indoencers Podcast. Our guest today is a national award-winning vocalist who is a regular for the legendary AR Rahman sir, and who has worked with so many of the nation's top musicians, including Mithoon, Ravichandar, the one and only Illayaraja sir, among countless others. Her road to the top was far from straightforward though, as it is a journey filled with struggle and rejection. But yet, more importantly, it is a journey also filled with an inhuman level of ambitiousness and persistence, true to the predominant traits of a Capricorn. Through her independent compositions, she sheds light on her introspective self as she explores the thoughts and feelings that existed beneath the surface throughout her life. I'm so excited to welcome to the podcast singer, songwriter, lyricist, theater actor, professional swimmer, and so much more, the incredible Shashaa Tirupati. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Nisha. That's just so overwhelming the way you introduced me. It's like, am I even worthy of half of what you said?
You're worthy of multiple times more, as we'll find out as we explore your journey. So just in general right now, obviously, as much as it has been overstated, these sort of past 18 months or so have been challenging times in various respects. So as a musician, as an artist, how have you coped with it? And do you think there were any positives you were able to take out of the situation you were forced into?
So, you know what, to be very honest, I don't feel like it's been as difficult as, at least for us as musicians. I think people who've been doing 9-to-5 jobs perhaps, or like daily wage workers, I think they're the ones who've been most affected by the situation that we've been forced into. I think for us, things couldn't have been any more convenient. And I think, I think we come from that place, and we've had the privilege of working out of our homes. I have my own home setup. I mean, of course, I produce music and I record my own songs, and I do a lot of original music. So, which is why for me, it was also easy in terms of recording tracks for other composers at the convenience of doing so from my home studio or my home setup. So I think that just makes things a lot easier for us as compared to people who perhaps have not had hands-on experience of recording themselves in a studio. And having said that, I've recorded an entire extended playlist sitting at home, and the EP I'm currently working on, called, tentatively titled "I'm Sorry Heart." It features Keba Jeremiah, who, I mean, of course, everybody knows of him. He's worked extensively and exhaustively with Rahman sir, with Anirudh, with Vishal Shekhar, with everybody. And he's a musician I'm in tremendous awe of. And he and I feature on the album, on the extended playlist. And that the entire thing was recorded at home. And so I have no qualms of the situation we've been forced upon. And having said that, I do have my empathy with everybody who suffered during these times. But for us, I think we've been blessed that way. And I mean, also, I would like to add to that there's a lot of singers who were only singers who are now, in quotation marks, engineers for themselves. They're recording themselves, they're comping their own takes, they're sending them across, they know how to bounce files. It's amazing to see how self-sufficient our industry has become. So
yeah, and
opportunity and adversity, right?
Yep, exactly. And your EP is actually something I want to get into a bit later. But let's start off with the beginning, as we tend to do on this podcast, and kind of walk the path you've walked throughout your life. So your journey actually, intriguingly, starts in a similar way to some of the previous guests that have come on this podcast. In episode 8, I interviewed Apurva Krishna, who told me about how she was able to play tunes on the piano as an untrained toddler. And in episode 10, I interviewed Aditya Prakash, who was telling me he could recognize ragas at the age of 4. And you're quite similar in that respect, having wowed your parents with a rendition of a Lataji song with a lot of sort of complex gamakas while playing with your toy trucks in your home in Vancouver. But was music and singing always something that felt natural to you, not only from an ability perspective, but also from an enjoyment perspective?
for me, when I started listening to music, I've been very blessed. I consider myself to be very blessed. I had parents who had pristine taste in music. They listened to music that today when I go back to it, I realize the compositional value and the lyrical value to the music that I was exposed to growing up. And the music that I was listening to, at least the film music that I was listening to, was the kind of music that excited me. That, when I would see, the thing is that Indian music, Bollywood, is the only kind of music where we have playback singing, right? It's not prevalent in Hollywood. So I never knew of the entire concept wherein there would be a singer who would be singing for an actor who would be seen on screen, but the singer is nowhere to be seen. I was completely oblivious to this. And I think when I started understanding that this is what happens, this is certainly what I wanted to do. I mean, I definitely wanted to make a career out of this, but having said that, I was also a pretty decent student, I guess. So I did win, 7 scholarships into university, and I was going forth with my pre-medical studies and all of that. So, but having said that, I think my heart, it's about where your mind is versus where your heart is, and I think both my mind and heart at some point kind of coincided and landed up on music. And that's where I kind of realized that this is what I enjoy doing, and this is also what I would like to make a career of. And that is where the idea to run away from home and to come to Mumbai and to pursue music full time kind of came up. So, but I mean, having said that, yes, growing up, my parents did want me to have music as, so it was the other way around. I think they wanted me to fall back on music, but have neurosurgery as my predominant, stream of work and my main career and that kind of thing. And yeah, music as a sideline. I kind of did it the other way around. Not even the other way around. I mean, I did end up getting my master's in marketing, but music did end up becoming my dominating in terms of my career and line of work.
Yeah, and so just going back to your younger days, you're obviously really sort of capable and talented even from a young age, and you were singing on local radio stations in Vancouver ever since the age of 6. And
Correct.
You've talked about in other videos how nowadays you sometimes get anxious when performing live, but was that something that was prevalent from the beginning as well?
You know what's really weird? I think we overcomplicate our lives as we grow older. So I think you'll probably resonate with what I'm saying, 5-6 years down the line. I think I gave my first stage show when I was 7 or 8, and I didn't feel like I was performing in front of, like, I don't know, 500 people or maybe 1,000 people. I don't even know how many there were in the auditorium at the time. But at that time, it's just like, you go in and you just sing and it's like, okay, this is done. I'm done with my song, and you get out of there, right? Right now, it's like, oh my God, there's like 20,000 people. Oh my God, am I going to be able to sing in pitch today? Or, oh my God, I've got a sore throat. How am I going to deal with this? Or, oh my God, is the audience going to react? It's like you're so. And I think, part of it stems from the fact that, like, today I can understand that nobody would have sat there judging me when I was 6, but everybody's going to be there judging me when I'm 30. So I think that's one thing that we kind of keep in mind now. And other than that, I mean, there are a lot of expectations when you're, 250 songs old. I think you kind of think from the audience POV, and you kind of think you want to satisfy them. You want them to be happy. You want them to feel, fulfilled at the end of and I think that's a tremendous responsibility. So they say, right, like with fame comes a lot of responsibility. And I think I hold that very dear to myself. And I am who I am because of my audiences and because of people who've given so much love to the music I've put out there and to the songs that I've sung. So I think that is part of the anxiety. And then I mean, people who suffer from ADHD, anxiety it's just a part of our DNA. We're just more, I guess we're more prey to being anxious and depressed kind of thing. So I think anxiety is a part of that. But yes, I do love what I do. I love going up on stage, and I love interacting with my audiences and singing for them and listening to them sing along to hits that I've I've recorded. So that's a surreal experience altogether. And I would do anything to experience that again, particularly post-COVID.
Yep, I think many musicians can resonate with you on that front.
For
And
sure.
so your sort of musical journey started with, or I suppose it's based on your classical education. And although you did learn from gurus and you even shuttled between Canada and India so you could spend time in India to learn, you call yourself mostly self-taught in terms of Hindustani music. So how exactly did this dynamic work?
Yeah, so the thing is that when I started off, I did learn a lot through audio cassettes and through CDs. So my father, what he used to do is he used to connect an auxiliary cable to the internet from my computer. I had a PC, and he'd connect an auxiliary cable from that to my tape recorder, and he would make mixtapes for me. And my mom would sit down and write lyrics to all the songs that I would learn. And then I would sit in my bedroom for like 6 hours constantly learning those melodies. And you know what's really funny is that till date I sleep on, like, if you're looking towards the head of the headrest of the bed, I sleep to the left of the bed, and my hand always dangles under my bed, because that is the side where my tape recorder used to be when I was growing up. And all night I would press rewind and play and rewind and play just 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 to internalize those really difficult runs or those really difficult parts in a song. And that is where I picked up so much. Oh my God. Like I did come back to India. Like my parents brought me to India, and I used to train under a guru who was the most stunning guru I could have asked for at the time. But she was so, I mean, I think it comes with the expertise she had, that she was very busy. She was touring a lot and everything. So it was really difficult to get her time and to actually, be able to go and reach her and sit down with her for 4 hours and, multiple times a month. So there would be times where I'd barely see her for, a lesson a month. And so I think a lot of my musical education while being in India, even when she was my guru, came through listening to all the audio cassettes and the mixtapes and the CDs, Nusrat Sahab and, Rashid Khan Sahab and Kishori Tai and Veena Sahasrabuddhe ji, one of my personal favorites, Ashwini Bhide ji. I would listen to all these mixtapes while I was in India, like even after my parents brought me here. So a lot of my learning has been self-taught. I taught myself notation. Today, even when I go into a studio and I need to sing a song, I notate a lot of songs if I can't immediately remember or memorize the melody, just because it's that notation which helps me through the melody of the song, and so I can record quicker, right? But a lot of that came through reading a lot of books and just listening to a lot. And till date, that is what the strategy behind my learning for me, learning continuously and learning till I die is kind of how I function. So even every day I listen to a lot of audio podcasts. I make sure that I'm abreast with what's happening around me, and just I like a lot of random information. So when it comes to what I pursue as a career, I think it's all the more important. And I think it's also about the sincerity that I offer towards my line of work. So I do listen to a lot of music, and there's so many artists that you listen to on reality shows or just so many new bands, and Apple Music keeps giving me, and Spotify keep giving me, so many suggestions. And I love immersing myself in that and inculcating and imbibing and emanating as much of what I hear into what I have to offer as well.
And yeah, you just talked about how you were practicing, 6, 10, 12 hours a day at times. And amidst your early musical education, I read that your parents were quite strict on you on practicing daily, and understandably so, because Indian classical music in particular requires a lot of consistent practice. But there's probably a fine line between sort of nudging and guiding a child versus straight up forcing them, because forcing could potentially kill the sort of child's innate interest in the art. So do you think there's a sort of common or objective sweet spot between the two, or do you think it's relative and dependent on each individual child?
So you know what? I feel to an extent that it's that forcing me initially that kind of pushed me into realizing how much I loved what I did. I think had my parents been a little slightly more lenient and been like, huh, beta, if you like to sing, sing. If you don't like to sing, it's okay. Had my parents been like that, I think I would have taken it very lightly. I think, and the thing is that I've always been a very obedient daughter. Also being the eldest daughter in the family, and the eldest sibling. For me, I just felt that onus of setting an example for my younger siblings was always a priority for me. So I think I kind of subdued myself to when my parents would even force me. But today I feel that forcing me into going, and that it's like I mentioned earlier, initially it felt like, oh my God, like no pizza till like another 4 hours. And so I just like, punish so initially what seemed like a punishment today in hindsight and retrospectively is such a friggin' blessing, because I there is no way I would have had that sense of discipline towards my art and my parents not forced me initially. And I think at the same time, your parents have your best interests, right, at heart at the end of the day. And I'm talking about like the sane parents. Like, I'm not talking about psychotic parents. I'm talking about like, most of our parents out there. They do have our best interests in mind, and mine did as well. And I realized it today. And I think I thanked them for that after like I hit my mid-20s. I was like, you know what? If it weren't for you guys, there's no way I would have even realize that this is something that I'd like to do, and this is something that I have such a fascination for, let alone like an aptitude or just being blessed that way. So I think when parents force you at a younger age, it's because they want you to explore and kind of, because the thing is, it is boring. I'm not saying that when you doing riyaz today, like, like when you're even when you, like, I just hit 31, and today when I sit down and I practice, I do feel bored at times, like, that is, it's not the most exciting experience, but that you have to do that so that you can sing something like, an A Mr. Minor and the fun, so you can sing that in tune and you have people smitten by you. But having said that those are the basics. Then it's like learning the alphabet. It's like, so your parents do force you to go to school and get your elementary education, right? So that you can go on to become a neurosurgeon, go on to become an engineer, go on to become, any sort of professional that you do end up becoming. So I think that's important. And I think for children, it may take a little time for them to acknowledge it and to appreciate it, but they will eventually. And I'm so glad my parents were the type to do that.
Yeah, and in terms of singing, obviously you were practicing a lot of your Hindustani stuff as well, but you were also into choral and gospel singing, if I'm not mistaken. And the singing styles between the sort of choral and gospel space compared to the Hindustani space vary quite significantly. And from my own personal experience, so I did Carnatic music and choral music, but
Yeah.
I have struggled to make sure I keep the respective singing styles separate and to make sure that unnecessary influences don't wade in. So did you perhaps go through any such similar struggle in this respect? And as a follow-up, do you think there were any ways in which engaging with choral music helped with your Hindustani education?
So I didn't delve. So it was a very casual choral or gospel music exposure that I've had. It was just part of school, and of course, I mean, I used to attend church afterwards. I'm a Kashmiri Pandit, but I did go to church just sing and just to explore and because I love the music. And I went to a convent school. I've attended an all girls convent school, and we used to sing a lot of gospel music there and everything. But I think for me it wasn't too difficult to draw a line between the two. I think the reason being, at home there was one culture that was very predominant or prevalent, and then the moment I would be in school, so I think I'm pretty, I'd consider myself to be pretty decent at compartmentalizing myself. So at home, when I would be in an all Hindi or an all Urdu atmosphere, in school it would be completely English and that. So I think with the language played a major role in that. considering Hindustani. For me, it was Hindustani music. So Hindustani music was a different language altogether. And then the moment I was in school or in choir, or even back home in Canada, when I went to elementary school and I did a lot of choral music, that was all English. So I think your intonations kind of automatically adapted. So I don't think that was ever an issue. But today, I think it's beautiful how we've come to merge both of them. So, even when you look at musicians like Raja sir, when you look at Rahman sir, you look at Ani, you look at all, I think there's a lot of cross-pollination that's been happening, particularly over the past 5 odd years. But it's been in India for a while now. I think it's a beautiful thing, especially for composers who are able to incorporate both in a very seamless way, as well as in a way that doesn't take away from the beauty or the essence of both styles of music. I think that is integral. It shouldn't seem like a khichdi or a BC Belevat. It needs to come across as, a beautiful concomitant of both. And I think composers like Rahman sir and Raja sir and Anirudh Ravichandar, all of these guys, I think they're doing a fabulous job at that. And it's just going to get better is my belief.
Yeah, and you briefly touched about how you were kind of compartmentalizing yourself, and you kind of had a separate identity at home compared to at school. And a perennial struggle for a lot of Indians living abroad is this whole identity crisis, or the question of where's home. Was there anywhere you felt you could call home, or was it always a kind of limbo space?
I'd rephrase your question from was to is. It still is. I don't know. And what's really uncanny right now is that I was talking to a friend yesterday itself. I didn't know, I had no idea what you're going to ask me. Yeah. And a friend of mine, I was telling him that I've lived in Mumbai for about 11 years now. I grew up in Vancouver, Canada. I lived in Allahabad, which is like UP, which is, well, I don't know what you'd know about UP, but that has a different reputation altogether. So I've lived there for about 6 years. And when you put it all together today, I don't know what to call myself. I don't know whether to call myself a Mumbai. I've spent a considerable amount of time in Chennai. So, and I sing in 13 languages. So I really do. I feel like a global citizen. So limbo would be an understatement. I feel blessed to be in a place where I don't know what to call home. I think that just makes me open to accepting and kind of adapting to anything that comes my way. And I think we're so blessed to be musicians or artists when we get to explore, so many different languages and the music and the essence of the music associated with every language. Every language has its style. It has its musical language. It's not just about the verbal language. It's not just about the vernacular. It's about the language of the melody, the language of the expression. And it's so different with every language. And I think it's just so pristine. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. And like even Tamil music, there's, the language allows you to give so many colors to so many different emotions. The same language, when you're singing a ballad, you're so in love just listening to how the language flows, like a van, varu, van, toru, van. It just sounds like it's made for like a romantic song. Tamar is made for romance. But then when you hear something like a kara, it's like Tamar is made for peppy music. So it's like, it's such an adaptive, and that applies to so many different languages that we're privileged and we're blessed singing. So I feel like a global citizen, to answer your question. And I would like to continue and increase that number from 13 to like 87. I think there's 87 prominent
oh, really?
languages. I think so. I mean,
I have no clue. I'm sitting at a measly 3 languages, so 87 is a long way to go.
Jack of all trades, master of none here. So I think your proficiency would be far above where I stand. No.
We've talked a lot about your music and your sort of musical background, and of course that's very fascinating as well. But just to diversify a little bit, I heard something that really surprised me. And I think this can also help us understand your journey a bit better. And you've said in an interview that from the age of 12, you started working and were earning enough to cover your own costs. And I see similarities between this sort of 12-year-old self-sufficient Shashaa and the late teen Shashaa who moved to India on her own to pursue music, which we'll talk about later. But was this urge to be self-made and self-sufficient always there? Or was there some sort of trigger which made you adopt this mindset?
I think we are what we kind of grow up seeing. For me, I grew up seeing my father working 3 jobs or 2 jobs, and seeing him as in that's quite ironic because I would never see him at home, but I knew he
Mhm.
was working. So, he would come home, he would sleep for 2 hours, 3 hours, and he'd be off for another job. And that's kind of how we grew up. And it irks me a lot of times when people in India ask me how I would probably be, the daughter of coming from an affluent family and this and that.
Mhm.
Even though I come from a very average, typical middle class family, who's worked their butts off to be where we are right now. So my father has been very hardworking. That's what I've seen growing up. And for me, my parents have been very self-sufficient. My father he had a lot of self-esteem and self-respect. So he would never take anything from my grandfather,
Mhm.
kind of thing. So for me, I think seeing that, we never, like, my parents never took favors from people. If they took, something, they'd give back twofold or threefold or multifold kind of thing. So I think that's such a beautiful place to come from. And seeing that growing up, I think it kind of translated into me as well. So being self-made, it makes a success so much more sweeter. And so when I won the national award, or when I won the film fair, I knew that, I came to India from a place where I had no money from my parents. I took nothing from them. They were all savings. They were all scholarship funds, which were supposed to be put into my education, but I ended up putting no offense, but yeah, I did put it into my career. So it's not that I blew it on drugs and alcohol. But yeah, so I think after when you get that award, it's like, what, I really worked hard on this. And I also, so yes, I was about 12 when I started. So initially it was paper deliveries, and it was tuition classes, and it was teaching music. So I had a lot
Oh,
of private
wow.
students I used to teach. Also because I was learning self-taught, as well as learning when I was as early as 7 years of age. So I taught as much as I could. I'm still teaching, and this is only based upon what I understand. And I mention that in all my tutorial videos as well up on
Yeah.
YouTube. The whole point is to give to people what they say, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So it's not necessary that everything that I've learned is implemented or is applied in my film music, which is very different. It's a different stream altogether. So I might as well teach people what I know, so that it's out there, so that they could benefit from it, and so that I don't lose it and it's not just gone because I've not put it out there. And if it helps people, that's great. So when I was 12, I started with that. Then when I was in school, so I finished school very early. For a host of for a host of reasons, and I was very involved. Sorry, there's just so much to talk about right now, and I'm just kind of
Please
trying to pick
let
out what I
loose.
should talk about.
That's the point of this podcast. So,
I know, right? Yeah, being doesn't help. So yeah, I was teaching, I was swimming, I was into Aikido, I was into ice skating, I was doing a lot of leadership programs in school. I was an entrepreneur. I was doing a lot of fundraisers. I was taking part in a lot of volunteer endeavors. Then got into university. Then 4.0 GPA to maintain that, it was really difficult.
must be.
Also because yeah, right. Also because yeah, to keep your scholarship, you had to have a 4.25 GPA, and it was really eating away at me. Sleep deprivation, a lot of insomnia, and all of that. So there was a lot that was going on at the time, but because I think financially I had my scholarships to kind of back me, that was one more reason why I didn't have to lean on my parents for that kind of support. And then when it came to the point where I wanted to take that decision, where I wanted to drop out and I wanted to come to India to pursue music full time, even then I think I'd accumulated enough or sufficient funds in my bank accounts to kind of take that plunge and come here. Even though after I got here and I wasted all that money on my airfare, I was pretty much on the road because I had barely had anything left. So I was literally on the road over here for 3 nights because I had no money to pay for rent and everything. But then I got my first job, God's grace, with which I paid off my deposit and my rent. And it's been, yeah, advertisements paid me a lot. That kind of got the ball rolling, and the reality shows got me gigs, and then obviously we do record film songs here without expecting anything, because usually for films we're not paid. So it was the advertisements that paid for that. It was the live gigs that paid for that, and took care of other expenses, miscellaneous expenses, day-to-day expenses. So, but yeah, I mean, I think after a good 6-7 years of like 25 flop films and a lot of hard work and perseverance and sincerity. I mean, I think the only thing I'm going to take credit for here is the hard work and being consistent in my struggle or in my pursuit. I'm not going to call it struggle. I'm going to call it my pursuit towards achieving some sort of recognition in my stream or line of work. It was the consistency that I'm going to take. It's the only thing I'm going to take away, because your voice, it's God's gift, right? I mean, it's your genes. It's obviously something that you get from above. So it wouldn't take a minute for God to take my voice away, or anything to happen, and it's gone. Or I scream too much at a gig, and the next thing you know, I lose my voice, or I lose something, a frequency in my voice. I don't know, right? But hard work is in our hands. That's something we have 100% control over, and that is one thing that I did. So when you mentioned that thing about practicing 10 to 12 hours, I have done that. I have worked really hard in trying to come to where I am at, and there's miles to go before I sleep.
Yeah, and you talk about the plunge that you took, where you decided to leave college and move to India. And that's probably putting it lightly, because in truth, once Guru came out, the album from AR Rahman sir, you locked yourself up in your bedroom and burned your textbooks until your parents allowed
you. Literally.
Yeah. I did read that. Yeah. Yeah, you locked yourself up in your bedroom until your parents allowed you to go to Bombay to pursue music. And I am aware that there was resistance from your parents. And did this initial resistance lead to any doubt regarding your decision? Or were you just 100% sure once you made it?
Buddy, I think it's hormones. Like, when you're 18, you don't think. At least I didn't think. I'm a very impulse, just it's second nature to us. So for me, it was just like, yeah, I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna be a star in like a year anyway. So you have nothing to worry about. It took me 7 years to become a friggin' anything close to becoming a star. But yeah, in the moment, I wasn't afraid. I was excited. I had butterflies in my tummy. If you ask me to do that today, I will not be able to do it. But at that time, I think you believe in yourself more than you believe in anything. And then reality hits you, and then, shit hits the roof, and you're like, oh crap, 7 years, that kind of thing. But in the moment, I was very confident about my capabilities, kind of thing.
Yeah, and you brought this up a bit before as well, but once you got to India, part of what helped you pay the bills was stepping into the world of reality TV and participating in televised singing contests. But I'm aware that you're not the biggest fan of shows like these. So does your aversion to singing competitions come from your own personal experience with it, or just a general disliking of the concept in general?
So the thing is that I feel what happens is that people have made reality shows the parameter of success. And for me, that doesn't work. Just because obviously people have a massive role to play in who you are as an artist. It's what we create music for the masses. We create music for audiences. But I think, even when you look at cricket, there was match fixing, right? You see things like that happening. So even when it comes to reality TV, I'm not saying in every reality show. There are some incredibly just reality shows out there where I see, rightful contestants getting the kind of acclaim and the kind of positioning that they deserve, that they rightfully deserve, solely based upon merit. But there are a lot of reality shows where I just felt it was more about the showmanship than anything else. It wasn't based upon merit. So for me, it was just that I have no aversion towards reality shows. I think they are a great platform for a lot of musicians and a lot of budding artists and budding singers and talent to kind of shine. But having said that, I think it's also, it's not a circus. I think it's become a circus now, and I think that's very unfair. And I think also when it comes to TRPs, or when it comes to it just the numbers of it, I think that is, a lot of times it could be biased, a lot of times, and it could reduce the morale of a lot of singers who have the capacity of emerging to be stellar artists and a brand in themselves, and an inspiration to so many artists in the coming generation. So I think that lack of honesty is something that kind of bothered me. So I would love to be a part of a reality show, but probably not as a contestant today. Definitely not as a contestant today. But where I do have the liberty to speak my mind, where I do have the liberty to say what I genuinely feel about an artist, I would love to be a part of a reality show that way.
Yeah, and you did judge, I think it was Red FM in Canada.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So how was?
Yeah. I was a contestant on that reality. So that wasn't a reality show per se, but that was definitely a competition held in Vancouver, Canada. Yes, and I was the first Red FM idol, and I think I don't recall how many years ago that was, but I think 15 years after that, I ended up being a judge on the same show. So that felt very fulfilling, of course. And whoever we put forth as the winner was solely based upon their performance on the show. So that is priority for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And reality TV didn't quite get you the push into playback that you might have hoped for, unless I'm mistaken. And
no,
you kind of had to go again. And I'm aware that these sort of few years were just about trying to find whatever opportunities wherever and whenever possible, regardless of what it took. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to go into too much detail about the darker times, but just for us, us watching from the outside and not knowing what happens behind the scenes, what was it like going around cold calling and knocking on doors of studios and all that?
Those were difficult times for sure. So reality television was something I did for two reasons. Number one, because my parents wanted to see me on TV. So they were the biggest reason behind me even auditioning for these. And secondly, because once you do a reality show, people start knowing you, right? And that helps with you getting gigs, and gigs help with paying your bills. So we as musicians, we earn most of our income via stage performances and concerts and tours and all of that. So that was prominently why I did these reality shows as a contestant, why I participated. But then it's really about what you'd like to pursue professionally at the end of the day, ultimately. And that wasn't my goal. My goal was not to be, a live artist who has stemmed from a reality show. My aim was to be a singer, a playback singer, a singer who they listen to when they go to a theater, or when there's a Anushka Sharma or a Katrina Kaif dancing, there's a singer they're listening to. That singer was who I wanted to be, and it's latent perhaps initially, but afterwards, I mean, that was definitely the dream that had me pursue music professionally eventually. It started off with reality television, but for me, I felt that maybe so initially it was to pay the bills. And then afterwards it was like, maybe this might help me get seen or get me discovered. Didn't help. No, that didn't end up happening. I did do a lot of advertisements, like I mentioned. And one of the composers from these ad films is the one who gave me my very first film break. Not that it gave me, like worldwide recognition, but it was a friggin' gorgeous song, and I'm so proud
I
to have
agree.
sung it.
Yeah.
Right? Bam Bam
Yeah.
Bole.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm so happy that that was my first film song that I ended up singing, followed by a string of flop songs. But but that's okay. I think that kind of helped me understand microphone dynamics, understand how to sing behind a condenser microphone, singing in a studio environment, how to kind of deliver a song, how to express behind a microphone, Singing on stage and singing in a studio are antithetic to each other. They're so different. So to be comfortable in a studio setting is something that I learned along the way, and which is why that struggle period that you're talking about for me translates more into a learning period. That's where I kind of transcend into, or slowly,
Yep.
yeah, kind of get into that thing where when you're called for a big film, you know what you're doing when you're standing behind that microphone, instead of being there like an idiot and having pop, you don't know how to deal with the pops and the blows in your singing, or you don't know how to. So I think I've learned a lot over those 7 years of what people term as your struggle period, but for me that was a lot of invaluable experience gained.
And as part of that 7 years, something quite incredible happened. And I don't necessarily mean that in a good way. A prominent figure in the music industry who shall remain unnamed. I don't know who he or she is either, and let's not bring the names up, but told
Yeah.
you that you had a bad voice and should consider an alternate career. And this led you to give up singing completely for 2 to 3 years. And I'm kind of confused because considering that you gave up your whole life in Canada due to your confidence in your vocal abilities,
Yeah.
to quit singing after 2 years after this singular incident, or maybe it wasn't singular. You can tell me if I'm wrong there. But to quit singing after this incident does seem slightly strange. So, like, what was going on in your mind at this time?
Yeah. So I think we're as a Capricorn, as you mentioned earlier, we are very sensitive, right? We do take a lot of, we might not be the best at expressing it, but we do take a lot of things to heart. And that is kind of what happened when I was told that I had a bad voice. And but I mentioned this in several interviews where I I feel it was a blessing in disguise.
Mm.
I stopped singing, but I started songwriting, and I started putting my music out there, and I got a lot of appreciation for my compositions and for my lyrics. And I think, and I started producing music at that point. So had I been pursuing music full time, and had I been believing in myself the way I had prior to hearing this comment from this prominent personality, I probably would not have been opportuned to explore the possibility of producing music, or actually pursuing composition. I was composing when I was 15, 16 years old, but after having been told this, I think I took it a lot more seriously, and I think I had a little more faith in myself when I started doing this. And so today, when you do call me a songwriter, a singer, a music producer, I don't have to take credit for it with the feeling that, hey, I don't deserve it. I take credit for it because I actually ended up becoming that during that entire phase, and continuing to do it during the entire phase where I wasn't singing. And I'm actually happy that he ended up telling me this. So I think everything happens for a reason, and I think there was a reason why he told me that.
Yeah, but one sort of theme that has permeated throughout this podcast is your ability to sort of turn potentially negative experiences into positive ones. And I think that's definitely going to be one of my biggest takeaways from recording this. And speaking of positivity, eventually your career did take off, particularly once you got selected for Rahman sir's Coke Studio, and once you started singing for him. Amidst all of the experiences you'd been through up till that point, though, I'm sure you must have had a lot of insecurities, as you've talked about as well. So at what point of your career do you think these insecurities faded away, and were you able to confidently say that you had made it in the industry?
I'm still trying to make it in the industry. So I don't feel insecurity would be the correct term.
Mm.
I would probably say that there's a lot of ambition. There's just a lot of things that I still want to achieve. I don't think I've ever felt insecure. There may have been a lack of confidence, which I still do feel, because there's so much talent out there. You listen to everybody and you're in awe of so many people, and you want to inculcate as much as you can. Also because I feel like I'm like a perennial learner, and I'm going to be like that all my life. I just want to learn so much, and you listen to so much inspiring music out there, and in no way does it make me feel insecure, or a lot of times people say competitive, or I don't understand that altogether, because for me, it's, if you love something, if you love something so much, you'd be appreciative of it rather than competitive towards it, right? You'd be appreciative of it, or you'd be in awe of it, versus feeling insecure. So I think lack of confidence, definitely, but that's a personal struggle. When I hear somebody singing something, I'll try and sing it. And if I can't do it, that's like, oh shite, I need to start practicing better. but there's in no way I think that's inspiring. I think that pushes you. And I think isn't that what music is all about? I think, isn't that what art is all about? You see something, you see a work of art, and you're like, oh my God, like, how do they achieve that? Or, what level of expertise or hard work or dedication has gone into it. And then you feel like, why have I not been able to do this? Is it because I lack that level of sincerity? And then you get to work. So there's no competition. I don't see any element of insecurity or competitiveness or jealousy. A lot of times I see that a lot in the industry. And I just don't understand how that sentiment kind of, how that even happens. But yeah, I think for me, it's always been about being a better version of myself. And I think we have so much motivation and inspiration around us to kind of push us, and to get us on our asses, kind of thing, to actually get down there and get working. And that's with Rahman sir, that's what happens. After Coke Studio happened, I feel so blessed and so grateful to have been selected to go on to sing for him. And every time I hate hearing my voice, like, and I remember this one time sir told me that, if you don't like your own voice, how do you expect other people to like it? And I think from that day onwards, for me, it became a challenge. And like I said, it's not about anybody else. It's about your personal battles. So my personal battle became to fight with myself and to bring myself to a position where I loved my voice. So until and unless I sang in a way that I would love how I've sung it, that song never ended up seeing the light of day. So it's always about, and it's like you said, turning the negative into positive. I think that's how I've been raised, and B, it's what I've picked up along the way. And I think now there's a reason C, which is Rahman sir. I think he has taught me so much in doing the same thing. And he's a Capricorn as well. So I see how we kind of fit in that way.
Yeah, it's completely understandable that you've learned so much from Rahman sir, because I've never met him or talked to him or anything, but just listening to his music and listening to him speak is like, a university class of its own. So I can completely sympathize with you there. And speaking of your film repertoire, you've sung hundreds of songs and you've talked about many of your biggest hits in other interviews. So I'm not going to go into too much detail with those. Maybe I'll leave a few links in the show notes for people who want to hear about your biggest hits. But I do absolutely want to talk about your independent work. And you said that during your time in India as a child, when you were shuttling between Canada and India, you didn't quite fit into the culture of the school in India. And it was this sort of pain and loneliness, I suppose. Those are my words, not yours. But this sort of space that drove you to start creating music. So is music creation a coping mechanism for pain, or does pain kind of spur creativity, or both?
Yeah, I think it's a symbiotic relationship. I think for me, pain has been a massive trigger. Even today, if I'm going through a breakup, or if I'm going through, just like as we speak, I'm going through a lot of trauma.
Oh, I'm sorry to
So
hear that.
oh no, it's okay. It's totally fine. I think it's a part of life and it's important. You know, part of you becomes a bit of a masochist, I guess, in a way, where you enjoy that pain because you create so much in that. And I think it's part of your legacy as well as an artist. And I would like to leave behind a legacy. And so I think it's, as I mentioned, it's a symbiotic relationship. I think pain and art kind of have to go hand in hand. We're sentimental people. I think all artists have some element of sentimentality to them. And if they can express it or not, I think that those who cannot express it verbally express it through their art form. They could be painters, and you could see a lot of pain in that. Like even the Mona Lisa, you could see so much pain in that work of art. And in Rahman sir's music, even his happy songs, there's some element of pain to them, or there's something to them that makes you go, wow, why could anybody else not think of that or not feel that, you know? So I think pain, there's so much that can come of pain. And so a lot of times when people say, hey, I'm sorry you're going through that, it's like, no, I'm glad I'm going through what I'm going through, because there's a new song.
Yes, good news for me.
Exactly. There's my new EP. It's funny, but I mean, they say, right, there's comedy in tragedy, or comedy stems from tragedy. So I think for me, and you know what, part of me just feels so incomplete when I'm not in pain. So I think I kind of look for it. Create it for yourself. You don't see any pain, just drop a hammer on your foot and you're like, okay. I'm just kidding there, but but I think that it's integral that your heart needs to suffer, at least for people like myself. I'm sure there's a lot of happy music out there as well. I'm sure, like a lot of people write happy songs because they're happy, but it just doesn't cut it for me. And my entire, so I've been working on 2 EPs, and one of them is titled Stitched, which comes from various different scenarios that have been in a consistent part of my life. I've battled depression for about 15-20 years. I've been in an abusive relationship. There's all these things. I again, because I have borderline personality disorder, there's this question of not being able to understand who I really am, and all of this is a part of Stitched, wherein I say that even if, so we all go through so much shit, right? I mean, it's not that if you don't have any of these issues, you're perfect. You're emotionally stable, and you don't have your periods of your breaking points, right? So it's like, we break down, but then we pick up fragments of ourselves and we stitch them together and we suck it up and we go on with life. That is what Stitched is about. And then the other EP that I'm planning on releasing prior to Stitched is called, like I mentioned, tentatively titled I'm Sorry Heart, and that features Maajja, and that speaks about 4 phases in a relationship. But this is a relationship that never transpires. It's a relationship that a person lives in their mind, because it's not possible physically to happen. So you live an entire relationship with a person who has no idea you've just had a relationship with him. So it's that scenario. You like somebody and they're committed, so you can't be with them. So you might as well. There's no limit to what you can think or imagine, or just how happy you can feel inside. And there's a sense of pathos to that, because that this is not really happening, but you're just imagining shit and you're feeling happy in that imagination. So that's what I'm Sorry Heart is about. And it ties in with what your question was, which is about pain and music or art kind of being there together. And I think I couldn't function without pain. I don't think I would ever be able to write a single song without the pain that I've been through. And music is also, I mean, it's also an expression. I think if you're having to concoct emotions, or if you're having to create or make believe of a situation, I think then the music would never be honest, and people would see that. I think people are very smart, people who listen to you, they know what they're listening to. They'll call you out, and that's not right.
Mm.
So I would never. All the music that you're ever going to hear in terms of my independent music, Oceans Rained was a song I wrote. It was about abuse.
Yeah.
Beparwahi was about, that emotion where you just fall in love with somebody. It's about that emotion. When I wrote String of Air, it's about knowing that that relationships don't last, but enjoy it as long as it's there. Just cherish those moments that you get together. So everything has been a very honest expression of how I felt at the time of writing the song, and it will remain that way.
Yeah, and you brought up songs like String of Air and Oceans Rained, and songs like these speak about topics and times of your life that must be difficult to open up on. And so my question might tie in a bit to my previous question, but how tough is it to be vulnerable publicly? And does music make that process any easier?
It's very difficult to be vulnerable publicly, but I think for me, it's really hard to camouflage it. I try, a lot of times, like a manager would be like, hey, so you need to be a little more, or you just need to be a little more or you need to be a little more, but, I've tried to be that way. Like I'll try and put up that persona, but then eventually it comes down to like my 6-year-old mind and, my 12-year-old demeanor. I can't camouflage that for too long. And I think my fans, I feel blessed that I guess my fans love that about me, the fact that I can't be a hypocrite that way. And I would feel like a hypocrite being a hypocrite that way. So I can't pull through with that character, at least, which translates into my music as well. I mean, obviously, there are certain things that you would obviously not want to burden people with. So you just keep those things to yourself. You don't lie about them, but you just keep them to yourself. But having said that, I think music is meant to touch people, right? I mean, when music is a success, if we're talking about the commerciality of music or the commercial side of music, it's a success when people relate to it. And I think when people see the real side of you, when they see who you are in your rawness and in your most organic form, I think that is where they will also naturally find the relatability with you. And I think that is what I strive for as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of your music, as you say, does tie into sort of your emotional roots and your personal roots. But what may be a bit more absent in your original though is your musical roots, because we don't get to hear as much of your Indian classical singing or the Hindustani influences in your independent work. Is this a conscious separation, or is that something you want to delve into later on?
Right. So I think I've been stereotyped to be a classical singer because, what happens in our industry is that the moment you sing a classical hit, and which is exactly why you're asking me this question. It's because I've been stereotyped to be a semi-classical or a classical singer.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I've trained in Hindustani classical, but I think a lot of people forget that I was raised in Canada. I've been very well. I've been very lucky that I've been tied to my roots. My parents have made sure that we spoke Hindi and Punjabi and Urdu at home. And which is why, like, a lot of people here find it very surprising that I don't have an accent when I speak in Hindi. And they ask me, why do you not have an accent when you speak in Hindi? It's because my parents were very conscious of the fact that, we spoke in our mother tongue when we lived in Canada. But I think in English because I grew up in Canada. So you need to take under consideration that all the semi-classical and classical songs you've heard are from films. They're not independent work. So when I think in English, I would want to put whatever I'm thinking, I would want to translate that to the language in which I'm thinking. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. So if I'm thinking in English, I would want to put it out there in English, kind of thing. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So even the classical music, I'm not thinking classically. It's what I've trained in. That's the base of what I sing in. It's to train my voice. It's to tone my voice. It's so that I can sing a light composition with the fluidity because I have that classical base, which is what I practice in, and I'm very comfortable in. But that's not how I think. That's something I inculcated along the way. It's what I've trained myself in. But if you ask me the language I think in English. If you ask me the genre I think it's the genre that you hear when I'm writing an Ocean's Rain, or when I write A String of Air, or when I write, a Siyahi, which is the last song I released independently with Papan. That is how and that's in Hindi and Urdu, because I actually tried to translate how I thought in English into Hindi and Urdu, but I did take a lot of help from prominent writers of Urdu to correct me if at any point they felt that it was, not up to the mark, kind of thing. But like I said, stereotypes, I think it's so important that we break those. And I think that's why, when you get one hit song, which is a semi-classical hit, and then you'll have a string of composers and producers and directors calling you for the same genre of music. Whereas to begin with, if that was not your main genre, you're stuck, right? Because now you have to deliver the same thing to like everybody. So I think part of me also would like to break the stereotype that I've been associated with, in terms of my forte, or my singing genre, and that would be to tell them that this is who I am, this is what my identity is, and everything else are the various hats I wear.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think another kind of stereotype I've heard you talk about is how a lot of your songs tend to be in the kind of upper soprano-ish range, but you actually kind of prefer singing in a lower kind of range.
Yeah. You'll see that in my independent music as well. So most of my independent music, it's like I'm talking over here right now, but my songs are like over there. So yeah. The thing is that the moment I sing those songs, I lose my voice for like 6 days, and then and then I kind of I come back to normalcy. So my speaking voice is right here, and that is pretty much what my range is. But I mean, I don't mind it. I mean, I feel like, and I think that again, that's a different stereotype, altogether. I think which I think needs to be broken, which is that I think a lot of composers think that because it's a girl singing, the female voice, or the voice of a heroine per se, is supposed to be very high and just very melodious and just very light, whereas guys should have like a baritone and like a nice that. So I think that needs to really be broken. I think women can have that sexy low tone, that husk in their voices, and men can have those, like, listen to Sid, he has no lows in his voice, but look at how phenomenal he sounds up where he sings. He's got that amazing, even Benny Deal, that beautiful treble, and I think, or those high mids. I think we need to explore these possibilities. I think it would open up so many. Look at Bruno Mars, right? I think we just need to explore it a little more. I think we need to approach film music or mainstream Bollywood or Hollywood or Tollywood music with an open mind.
And yeah, we've been talking about a lot of your work, and we're just talking about your independent work as well. And looking to the future, you said you have 2 EPs releasing, and I also saw that you're associated with Maajja, the group founded by Rahman sir and the group behind the recent hit Enjoy Njami. And so is there any association with Maajja that we can expect with respect to your EPs? Is there a Shashaa version of Enjoy Njami? Like, not literally, but like, is something like that in the pipeline?
I would love for something like that. We just released an independent single together. The audio is out. We're still waiting for the video, called Untolil Saya, and that is with Keba. Again, Keba Jeremiah. And there we were planning on, we're still in talks right now, and we're exploring options right now. So there's not too much I could say about that at the moment, but I do look forward to an exhaustive association with Maajja, and they're doing a beautiful job, and I would love to work with them in the future as well. There's nothing concrete as of now, though. We're in talks. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be sitting here excited for sure. And we've talked a lot about your music, and over the past few years, with so many hit songs that you've sung, your popularity has grown immensely. And as a byproduct of that, there are more people who will listen to what you have to say. And I think it's fair to say that you have a larger influence on society than most others. And you've definitely used this in a very positive way. For example, through your song, Your Indava, which urges people to speak out against injustice, or through a lot of the incredible charitable work that you do, among other such initiatives. But do you feel any extra responsibility to be socially conscious because of your fame and sphere of influence? And have you ever felt overwhelmed by this responsibility?
I wouldn't say I've ever felt overwhelmed, because I think I've seen popularity from a very young age. So it's not something that has either gotten to my head, or it's not something that I've been completely oblivious to or ignorant of. Having said that, I also feel that with your power or with your position, there's always a sense of responsibility attached, and I really value that. When you have fans who look up to you, they're a part of your life, of course, but at the same time, there's always that sense of social and moral obligation towards them, and which is why I ensure that, which is why I do my tutorial videos, right? So I feel like, if I can make any bit of difference, professionally or personally to anybody's life, I would like to do that. I would like to be instrumental in being able to do that. Growing up, I've also done a lot of volunteer work, and it's part of our culture back home as well. So that's something that, again, that I've not been oblivious to. I've been raised in a way where my parents always gave back to society, and we do that. So now that I'm a professional musician, when I have a social media following, I know that the onus of being able to give back to them is entirely upon me, as far as my audience and my fanship is concerned, and which is why I do as much as I can to live up to their expectations. And we do have social and moral obligations, and my private life is very private, but my social life is nothing that should make them feel like it's too much different from who I am as a person, privately.
And we were talking about your future plans as well. And I mentioned the two EPs that you're planning to release. Is there anything else that the future holds for you? Anything that you'd want to tell people about?
Well, these two EPs are like my life revolves around them. I mean, I'm so nervous. I'm so excited. I have butterflies in my tummy just thinking about them. But there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of hard work. There's so many people who are part of these two EPs who I want to do proud. And of course, I mean, I would love for my fans and new fans, and hopefully people who listen to these as well, to feel like they've heard something which is not the usual, but at the same time, which is very relatable. So there's that. And then of course, we just did a song in Tamil as well, Boday Ka Name, which is a duet with Anirudh Ravichandran. That's from the movie O Mana Penne. Then we did, Navarasa is a new endeavor in association with Mani Ratnam sir and Netflix. So that is something I'm very excited about. That's releasing tomorrow. And then, of course, there's a lot of more film songs that we're working on that I can't talk about right now, but they'll be out very soon, and in various languages. So there's Tamil songs coming out. There's some Malayalam songs due for release. There's some Telugu songs due for release. Hindi, of course. And then, of course, these two EPs that are independently being released. And there's some singles I've also been working on, again, independent singles, one with Shakti Sri Gopalan, there's one with Niti Mohan. So yeah, lots of things in the pipeline. I'm trying to get the right team together for the videos now. So that is a bit of a struggle because it's so difficult to find somebody who kind of aesthetically relates to you and understands what you'd like. So I'm looking for the right team. Once I do find that, those will be out there as well. So lots of things happening.
Great. And then, yeah, that pretty much does it in terms of questions for the most part. But the listeners obviously know you as an incredible vocalist. And I have a feeling People might be very upset at me if I don't let you sing a few tunes, if that's okay. So apologies for the interjection. This is me from a couple of days later, a couple of days after the recording of the podcast. And yeah, I was just working on editing the episode right now, and I decided I'd leave this quick message. So as you heard in the previous clip, I had requested Shashaa to sing a few tunes if that was possible. However, she did have a bit of a sore throat, and of course, with a singer's life, they have recordings, they have gigs and all that, and the last thing I wanted her to do was push her throat beyond the limit for the sake of this interview. So I said, no, it's fine, let's not do this. And she was really, really kind, and she said she would send me recordings of her singing afterwards, after she felt better. And true to her word, she did. And she sent me a couple of recordings of her singing, which is so kind of her. So I'm incredibly grateful for her kindness in this regard. So all of you can enjoy 2-3 minutes of her singing right now. So I'll put those recordings right now, and then we'll jump back into the interview right after that. So just to briefly introduce the two songs that she's singing, the first song is a song called Hututu from the Hindi movie Mimi, composed by AR Rahman sir, and it's her latest song in collaboration with AR Rahman sir. So she's singing that in the first clip, and in the second clip, she's singing her latest independent release, an original composition in Tamil called Untitled Chapter. So yeah, two very beautiful songs, and she sung them incredibly beautifully as usual. So yeah, please enjoy. Thank you.
मन पहेली है सुलझा बेसुआदी सी जिंदगानी में नमक बन के तू घुल जा नया दिन चढ़ गया सूरज नया निकल गया ज़मीन बदली नहीं तो आसमां बदल गया हुतुतुतुरुरु हुतुतुतुरुरु मन पहेली है सुलझा रोटले vuranile iratila payatila vutolena saya kaatile vukotile yeduvume teriyala veredu devayilla விட்டு விட்டு வெலுகாம ஒட்டிக்கிருவோ நாம உன்னோட ஒன்னாக வந்தேனே என்ன தனியா விட்டு நீ வெளியெங்கும் போவாதே பக்கத்துணையா மட்டும் நீ இருந்தாலும் போதாதே.
And then the trademark sort of final question that I ask every guest that comes on. You've answered this question before, but it's kind of become tradition, so I'll ask it anyways. What's on your playlist right now?
Oh, how about you ask me what's not on my playlist right now? Oh my God. I listen to so much music. You'll probably think I'm like a psycho that way. I mean, obviously, Radiohead and Bon Iver are my go-tos. They're a love for me, and the Japanese House. I mean, these are three of like my iconic everyday playlist people. But then I do listen to a lot of new music, and I discover, and my favorite pastime is to discover new artists. And I've been digging Rye. There's this, I don't know if it's an artist or if it's a band, but RHYE, they're incredible. Then there's Novo Amor. There's Nick Lang, who I really want to work with, like so bad. There's another band called Palace. There's a song of theirs called Heaven Up There. Oh my God, I've been tripping on that. What else? I've been listening to a lot of Widow Speak is another band. Iron and Wine is another band. So I do listen to a lot of music. I feel like I've been put on the spot whenever I'm asked that question. So, but these are the artists I'm listening to right now.
All right. That sounds great. Certainly lots of music for me and the listeners to check out.
Please do.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, all right. I think we'll finish the episode off there. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to the listeners for tuning in.
Chad, hands down, these are some of the best questions I've been asked in my career, man. I feel privileged to be doing this with you. I don't
Oh
say
my
this.
gosh.
I never say this.
I'm going to leave this in the edit. I'm proud of this. Well, that was Shashaa Tirupati on our 11th episode of the Indoencers Podcast, and thank you to everyone that has tuned in. You can find us at the Indoencers, spelled THEINDOENCERS, on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or you can use the links in the description. Likewise, you can find our homepage at theindoencers.wordpress.com or through the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the Indoencers Podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.